nothing happens here at USC without the buy-in and the alignment with the schools and the deans. Welcome to Trojan Talks. I'm Byung Kim, interim president of USC. This podcast is a new space for conversation with people both inside and outside our university as we look toward USC's future.
And I'm Willow Bay, Dean of the USC Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism. And for this first episode, I get to be in the interviewer seat.
Yes, to introduce today's show, we decided Willow should ask the questions. And Willow being Willow, she has a lot of questions.
All right, Byung, thank you for inviting me to do this. But my first question is a really basic one, which is, why did you decide to do a podcast? Why choose this platform?
So first, I love podcasts. And I think that part of the reason it's such a great medium is because they're conversational. Mm-hmm. And that's a great way that people listen and learn. And then the second reason is really more instrumental. I'm just looking for new ways of reaching new audiences to share the excitement about what's happening at USC.
Well, this is a very special time at USC. It's the start of the fall semester, so we're going to consider this your back to school edition of the podcast. You presided over convocation. You were up on stage performing with the students during all the welcome activities. How does it feel to have the fall semester starting and to have it starting while you're in this new role as interim president?
It couldn't have come at a better time. As you know, Willow, universities have been navigating a lot of uncertainties over the last months. And so having students back on campus, it is such a rejuvenation of why we do what we do, why it matters, and why we really should be optimistic about the future.
I love the energy at this time of year. I also love that everyone's happy, which I'm sure you're appreciating at this moment as well.
Yes.
Okay, so Dean of the School for Journalism and Communication, I need to ask you about how you think about communication. You're an incredibly effective communicator. You're thoughtful, you're clear, you're candid. You're also a good listener. But those are just my observations. How do you think about your communication style?
Well, first, thank you. Those are high praises from the Dean of the Communication School at USC. So I think about a few things when I think about communicating at a place like USC. First, context matters. Mm-hmm. USC is enormous. Mm-hmm. We have tens of thousands of faculty and students. We have 23 schools. We have a health system. We do so many different things that impact the community. And so I don't think it's possible to over-communicate when you're trying to get a message across all of those different audiences, which also span different demographics. People in all parts of the university receive and absorb information in very different ways. So I think over-communication is really important. I would say the second thing I think about, Willow, is people don't necessarily just want to read an email or get information in a kind of dry way. They want to get a sense and have a sense of who's actually delivering the message. Who is that human being? Does he or she share our values? Do we connect with them? And so paying attention to that human element, I think, is really important. And that's why some of the communication I've been doing recently has been actually at town halls. It's not been through emails, but it's been showing up in person and speaking to people directly, and I've found that to be effective.
First of all, we're happy to put you on the faculty here based on all that you've said, which is spot on. And you have met with thousands of folks here, faculty and staff and students across the university, face to face. I know you did that here at the Annenberg School twice. What have you been hearing from people? Are there common themes? And then what do you do with that? Do you take it and then reflect it in our work going forward?
Very much. I like to say, and it's true, as important as I think the town halls are for the people who work here and who are advancing the mission, it's really me who is gaining, I think, the most, because I get so much feedback. And just one other thing about communication is I think it requires a lot of humility. There's always going to be a gap between what I mean to say and what the message is I'm intending to convey and the way it's actually received by people. Mm-hmm. There's always going to be that gap, and all that I'm focused on is just trying to make it as small as possible. And I think one of the ways that you can do that is through trust. Once you've built up a little bit of trust with people, they can help fill those gaps. Now, with respect to what I've been learning, there have been themes. And obviously, there's concern about what's been happening in higher education over the last several months. But I would say that what I have come away from those town halls feeling is just a renewed sense of what a special place USC is. People care so much about the university and its future success. And they want to contribute their ideas, their perspectives, their experiences to help make us better. And so one of my challenges, which I'm leaning into, is how do I continue to tap into that desire to help? And it's a challenge, but one of the things that I think you've heard me talk about is I'll be standing up a faculty committee just to make sure that I'm getting ideas from the faculty and from other groups throughout the course of the year. I'd say the other thing, Willow, that's really struck me is not just how much people care about the university and its future, but about each other. Mm-hmm. I was at a faculty meeting a few weeks ago, and there was a faculty member who said, I'm actually not here to talk about my own concerns or give you my own faculty perspective. I'm here to let you know how important our staff are at USC. And I just thought it was very moving to kind of hear that kind of concern for other people. And that's something that is definitely something I'm trying to keep at the center of everything that I do.
It's nice because I hear that a lot too from our faculty, expressing concern and interest about staff and wanting them to feel valued in their jobs supporting us along this mission. One of the things that I find so impressive about the way you engage with groups is you balance confidence, right, in laying out your strategy or tactics like the faculty advisory group, but you don't get defensive when folks get critical. How do you manage that?
I really, so it's not always easy. So sometimes I do want to react. Mm-hmm. But even when people are upset, Willow, for a reason. And what I really try hard to do is to understand where it's coming from and not take it personally. And I just find that to be just a better way of engaging with people. And I think that they understand also that I was asked to play this role, and I'm really doing it because I want to make the university better. And I think they understand that, but I also understand that sometimes people need someone to express their frustrations mm-hmm. to, and that's part of this job as well, to receive those frustrations, but also to try to channel them into real improvements for the university.
One of the things that you have been sharing is your strategic priorities. And obviously we spent a lot of time over the summer working through the financial sustainability plans. But among your other significant priorities are protecting the core mission and advancing academic excellence. So I'd love to, if you're okay with it, drill down into some of those.
Sure.
So one of the things that you've talked about is, as we advance academic excellence, one of the key measures of that being student success. What are you most focused on when we look at areas of student success, and how is that going to shape our activities in the year ahead?
Yeah, I'm so glad you started with that, because USC does so many things so well, but the first priority, and I'm basically quoting from our mission statement, is academic excellence and excellence in student outcomes. So it is a focus of mine, and it's a focus of everyone at the university. So I'm a big believer in the idea that if you're not measuring it, you can't improve it. And so one of the things that I've been doing is really just trying to get data and identify metrics of success with respect to student outcomes. And just to take one common metric, graduation rates, right? Our graduation rate is fine, but could it be better? I think so. And what's really interesting is when you just dig into that particular metric, you learn a lot of things, and they're not necessarily what you would expect. So it turns out that one of the reasons why the graduation rate isn't a little bit higher is because students are struggling with mandatory calculus classes in some of their programs. And that then raises all sorts of questions about, well, are they coming to USC without the preparation they need to succeed? Is there something about math in particular that students find intimidating? Is there something about the way we teach calculus that could be improved? So there's not necessarily for every single metric going to be one factor or one root cause. We have to look at a lot of different things, but that's the conversation I think we're going to be having this year. And I don't think the conversation takes off unless people are focused on the metric and trying to figure out how can we collectively raise that graduation rate and other metrics as well.
So what are some of the other metrics? And by the way, I struggled mightily with calculus. When you said that, I had this flashback to my undergrad years at Penn, thinking, oh, that calculus class was, who knew? That was part of a significant student trend.
Yeah.
But other metrics?
Well, so there's graduation rates. There's also how many of our students are graduating with jobs. How many of them, before they graduate, are getting internships? Because internships are now a very important way that people are getting jobs after they graduate. What is their debt after they graduate? What kind of salary are they getting after they graduate? And is there a strong return on investment for the investment they've made in USC? So those are just a few of the metrics relating to student success. But I actually have a whole dashboard of indicators that I'm going to be working on with the whole team throughout the course of the year.
And we'll work on those at the university level, but also on a school-by-school basis?
Okay, so great question. Nothing happens here at USC without the buy-in and the alignment with the schools and the deans. That's where the magic happens. And I'm not just saying it to you, Willow. So one of the things that's been most gratifying about my first couple of months is the way that we've been able to bring the leadership of the university from the board on down aligned around the same set of goals. And with that alignment, I don't think there's a limit to what we can do.
I'm going to broaden out a little bit. I know there was a significant number of priorities that I want to dig into with you, but if we zoom out and look at the broader environment across higher ed, it's very challenging right now, as you well know. I don't need to tell you that. And I'm just wondering, first, let's start with how would you characterize this environment right now?
I would describe the current environment for higher ed as volatile and uncertain.
When you joined us at our town hall, we got what I thought was a great and very pointed question, no surprise, from one of the Annenberg faculty, a journalist. And I'm going to paraphrase what he asked, which is, we're living through a moment where independent knowledge feels very much under attack. And whether that is scientific or scholarly research or journalism, it all feels very much under siege. So as you lead us in this institution forward, particularly around advancing our core mission, which is to produce and disseminate new knowledge, how will you help us navigate this climate?
So first, I think that the question that I got at the town hall definitely comes out of a real concern. And I understand how a lot of our researchers and faculty in particular feel over the last several months that their lifelong work has not been valued the way it should be. And it's part of the reason why I think in my second week I wanted to send out a message to the faculty and researchers and graduate students, which I did.
In that very cool lab, by the way.
Yes, in that very, it's a real working lab dealing with nanotechnology, I think. Wanted to send out that message, just communicating directly my appreciation for the work that they do and the university's appreciation for the work that they do. And you mentioned a word, independent research, and I think that that's really, really important and connects with some really important values. So I believe that without universities having the independence to pursue new knowledge and research, we don't have the kind of democracy that we want and deserve. It's that critical and it's that connected to our aspirations, not just as a university or as a community, but as a country. So I think the question comes out of a very important concern. I also feel obligated to say, however, that at USC at least, we continue to get new grants awarded. We continue to do so much impactful research, whether it's in Alzheimer's or cancer or blindness or the humanities and healthcare policy in so many different areas. And that's extremely gratifying. And it's really important, I think, for the faculty to understand we're continuing to push the water uphill, as people say. We're doing a lot of great work, even in this environment where there has been uncertainty and there has been some cutting back in some of the research funding. And I guess the last thing I would say is that I think we can't just believe in the value of what we do. We need partners. We need alums. We need government partners. We need other university partners. We need corporate partners. We need foundation partners. We need to communicate and engage with all of the stakeholders in our society and across the world who depend on USC and universities doing the important work that they do. And part of the frustration of this job, Willow, is actually just not feeling like I have enough time in the day, but that's going to be a real focus of mine in the months ahead.
So communicating our value to both internally and externally, and particularly in regards to the amount of groundbreaking research that we do. Where do we lead? Where does USC in particular excel?
I think that we're a very unique and special school in a lot of good ways. We have, as I mentioned, 23 schools. We have world-class conservatory level training in dance and music and in the dramatic arts and, of course, the cinematic arts, where we have the #1 school. We also have an incredibly strong College of Letters, Arts, and Sciences with the Dornsife School, and that's always going to be the core of any great university, including ours. We have yours amazing school, Willow, one of the greatest communications and journalism schools in the country, the Viterbi School. So we have more breadth, I think, than, or as much breadth as any other university in the country, and we have a tremendous amount of collaboration that happens. And part of what I think is our opportunity is to continue that and even strengthen the collaboration that we see across schools. It's amazing to me, Willow, just the extent to which, even though they're on a different campus, people are collaborating with the dentistry school and with the gerontology school and the medical school on the health sciences campus. So it happens, that magic happens, and I think that that's really a key part of why USC is so special and can have such an impact.
You mentioned when you were sharing your thoughts about our research strengths, our various partners, and it's clear that, particularly given the uncertainty around federal funding, we need to diversify the support for our research. I know you really are intent on broadening and deepening our relationships, our public partnerships. How are you thinking about that, and how will that impact students and faculty in their pursuit of research?
I think there's a huge opportunity here for us at USC. So federal funding is something that is, as the last few months have shown, it's not something that we should necessarily rely on to the same degree that we have over the last several decades. And people can agree and disagree about whether that's a good thing or not. I happen to think that it's not a good thing, but I think that the opportunity for us is to lean into the private partnerships that you're describing. Typically the way it's happened, Willow, is that you'll have a researcher in a particular school who's working in a very specific area, maybe developing a new technology that a company's interested in, and they form a research partnership or some kind of collaboration. And that's great, and that should continue. But I think there's a real opportunity, particularly for USC, to think about more robust private partnership models where we are the university of choice for a large company that may have needs not just in that technology, but in the dramatic arts or communications or music. And so I think that's a terrific opportunity for us that can help diversify our research support, but also could create amazing pipelines for internships and jobs for students after they graduate.
And leverage one of what I think is this university's remarkable strengths, which is the breadth and depth of our industry partnerships and industry relationships. I really think it's unrivaled, and I'm excited about you articulating this opportunity to really connect those dots and build stronger bridges and stronger relationships to our industries of practice.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really exciting project, not just for me, but for all of us to work on.
So let's talk about something simple like academic freedom.
Okay.
Look, freedom of expression is the cornerstone, right, of a great university. How do you think about helping USC become a place where multiple viewpoints are expressed, where people, students, faculty, and staff feel more than safe expressing viewpoints, but really excited about engaging around those different viewpoints?
Yeah. So academic freedom is obviously a core principle and bedrock principle of USC and other great universities. And the interesting thing about academic freedom is that it's not actually a legal concept in the way that free speech is, or in California we have something called the Leonard Law. It's actually a set, and a really important set of norms that undergird, I think, the work that all of our faculty and that we do as a university as a whole. And so if you look at it that way, Willow, the challenge is not necessarily on coming up with the best policies, the best statements, or making sure we have the right rules in place necessarily. The challenge, the big challenge, I think, is cultural. How do we create that culture where even if you have the right, you actually want to engage with different viewpoints and different perspectives? And as I mentioned in my convocation speech a few weeks ago, that's the amazing opportunity that USC offers to students, the ability to meet people from across the world and not just pass them by and note what they're wearing and note their differences, but to actually have a conversation with them, like the conversation we're having now, and learn and expand your horizons. And so how do you do that? First of all, I can't do it by myself. And so I'm so grateful to the Academic Freedom Task Force that was set up by the Academic Senate last year that came up with a great set of recommendations, all generated by the faculty, for how to create a more robust culture of engagement across these differences. And I'm also grateful to Professor Niraj Sood, who's going to be acting as a special advisor to me in basically advancing these recommendations by the task force. And it's really exciting. So we're talking about not just inviting a range of speakers to the campus to engage students and faculty on all sorts of different issues, but we're also talking about training for faculty who want to understand better how to teach very controversial topics, training for students to help facilitate difficult conversations, seed funding for student groups or faculty members who want to develop their own initiatives to improve our culture. So I think the key is to do a lot of different things to engage the faculty, the staff, the students. And if you can do all of that and just continue to talk as we are about the importance of that engagement, I think you can move the needle with respect to the culture.
I'll also toss journalism into the mix because there's a really interesting and growing body of research around how journalists can better engage with communities, particularly around issues that are very polarizing. So count us in.
That will be for the edition where I interview you.
Yeah, there you go.
Podcast, yeah.
What's the Open Dialogue Project?
So the Open Dialogue Project is what Niraj Sood is going to be helping advance. And we haven't launched it yet, so this will be...
is this breaking news? Are we breaking news, the Open Dialogue Project? Did I just spill the beans on that?
Exactly, but it's all good. We can consider this a soft launch, but that's the initiative or the project that Niraj is going to be helping lead. And so all the things I talked about, but also, Willow, we have so many resources already at USC from the Center for the Political Future. I know that in the Annenberg School you have all sorts of research taking place and institutes that are looking at polarization and how we communicate better across differences.
And the Price School also very invested in that space.
And they have the Center for Inclusive Democracy. We have the Schwarzenegger Institute also at the Price School. So part of, I think, what I'm going to be working on with Niraj is how do we coordinate all of these different efforts and amplify them.
Let's talk about something that I always ask particularly when I have parents here, who has gone for more than 12 hours without talking about AI? And nobody's hand goes up, or at least hasn't in the past, what I would say, 2 years. And I know that responsible use of AI and effective deployment of AI is very much on your agenda. It's another area of strength across this university with over, I think it's 36 centers, initiatives, research grants working in this space. What does a responsible use of AI look like here at USC?
Great question.
And how the heck do you corral all this stuff?
Yeah. So yes, everyone is talking about AI. And I think that there's reasonable disagreement as to how transformative it will be and how quickly that transformation may occur. I would rather be on the side of someone who overestimates the impact of AI rather than underestimates the impact of AI, because I think that I don't want USC to be behind the curve or underprepared for the changes that it's going to create. And I also think there are huge opportunities for us to lead, not just adapting or adopting AI, but also thinking about exactly what you're talking about in terms of how do we use it in an ethical and responsible way. So I think about AI's application to us in 3 different buckets. There's first AI in research, and it's really having a transformative impact. And it's ironic, Willow, that even with all of these uncertainties that we've been discussing, there is so much excitement right now in science. I was talking to one of our star cancer researchers, Peter Kuhn. He was almost jumping out of his skin. He's so excited about how close we are to making major breakthroughs in his field of cancer research, but so many others as well. So AI is, even in subjects like pure math, AI and philosophy, AI is just having an incredible catalyzing impact. And one of the challenges I think that we're going to need to think about is in order to really deploy and utilize and leverage AI, you need compute. You need computing power, and that's very expensive. And so how do we think about that, and how do we as universities start to thinking competitively with the private industry in terms which has more access to compute and is actually starting to use it like with DeepMind to really advance discovery.
And an opportunity for us to go back to the other topic we were talking about is to really deepen and expand our private partnerships.
Exactly.
Yeah. Send us your compute.
Exactly.
Got any? Send it here. We'll put it to good use and reflect that back out onto the community.
Yeah,
that's great.
But it's actually true. I mean, that could make a difference in terms of how quickly we can get to a preventative cure for Alzheimer's. So that's one bucket. Second bucket, AI in the classroom. How do we need to rethink what we're teaching, how we're teaching it, and who we're reaching? And the Marshall School Dean, Jeff Garrett, as you know, is going to be leading a strategy committee that's really just going to be focused on AI in the classroom for USC. And he's going to be joined on his committee with other deans and with experts across the university to focus on that. And the key, as you were alluding to earlier, Willow, is how do we engage the whole community in this conversation? Because everyone has amazing ideas. I was talking to a cinematic arts professor, Gordon Bellamy, a few months ago, and he was describing how he teaches a writing and ethics class in the School of Cinematic Arts. And he gives out his first assignment. He actually goes to ChatGPT and has ChatGPT basically write the paper that he's just assigned. He then distributes it to the students, and then they have a conversation about what ChatGPT got right, what it got wrong, what it missed, and then what each student could add to the topic that is uniquely theirs. And I'm not saying that that's the way we need to start teaching writing at all, but it is an evolution in how we think about AI in the classroom. Instead of just saying it's not allowed, are there opportunities to bring it into the classroom and elevate the discussion? The last thing I'll say is AI in operations. So I think that there are a lot of exciting opportunities there as well.
Parking spot availability.
Okay, we'll add that.
I'm going to ask you, you hit the ground running is an understatement. You've been on the job only a couple months and have accomplished an enormous amount. But I want to take a step back and just ask you, why were you game to take on this role of interim president?
Well, so I think, as you know, I grew up in the Trojan family. I joined the family the easy way by being born into it, not by doing the hard work of coming here as a student. But both of my parents were international students from Korea. they attended USC in the late 1960s and 70s. And so it's always just had an incredibly special place in my heart. And I would say the reason why I didn't hesitate at all when I was asked to take on this role is because as great as USC is, I also see its potential to have even greater impact. And I can't do it by myself, but the greatest thing that's happened over the last couple of months, I think, is the way that the leadership has really kind of aligned around not just the current challenges, but the opportunities that are ahead. And that's going back to your question about the town halls, Willow. I think that that's, as much as anything, what people want to know. They want to know that there's a vision and that the work that they're doing is going to advance that vision and be worth it for the university and for themselves. And it's just been an incredible privilege being able to work with you and the other deans and senior leaders in coming up with that vision and a game plan for getting there.
Well, we too are thrilled with the collaborative spirit and stand by ready to support and help you, Byung. Thank you.
Yeah, I used to say, Willow, that at USC, the sky is the limit. But then the student-run Rocket Propulsion Lab last year just broke the amateur record for how far into space they were able to launch their rocket. And so instead of saying the sky's the limit, I will just say the sky is just the beginning for USC. In all seriousness, I love just walking through the newsroom. I love it.
The energy is amazing.
Yeah, so just walking through to this room was really special.
Open invitation anytime.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
not that you'll get more than 2 feet without somebody asking you a question. We hope.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.